Hello, beautiful souls. Thank you so much for being here and joining this masterclass on being a modern day witch and what it means to be a witch. Are you a witch too? And what this really allows for us as women, especially. So, if you are somebody who very much wants to be comfortable in her own skin. And just as a side note, I do refer mainly to women throughout this workshop, just because I primarily work with women, but this is not to say that men cannot be witches too. And this doesn't have anything to do with gender. Okay, so please feel free to replace the her, she pronouns with whatever feels good for you. Okay, so if you are somebody who really desires to be in your power, to allow yourself to be seen and your voice to be heard, and also feeling a little bit more connected and a little bit more certain of yourself, and just having that sense of knowing and that faith and that trust that what you think is the right thing absolutely is the right thing, and that you don't feel like you're going a little bit crazy when you start to dream bigger, when you start to try and attract bigger and better things for you, that you know that because you can even dream that it is destined for you. It's already part of another realm. It's already happening for you in a different quantum field. So it is destined. It will happen. All we need to do is connect the dots and bring you together. So if you are somebody who feels those desires and you desire to have that stronger foundation in your life, that respect and that love for yourself and others around you, then you are absolutely in the right place. So congratulations. And the reason that I do this work, and especially on the witch side of things, I have been a coach for a while now, and my background is in psychology. So I love the psychology of things. I love neuroscience, any science, to be fair, I love. And counseling and therapy was started like the beginning of my journey. That is how this started. And then I became a qualified coach as well. And I thought, you know what, this is more progressive. This is kind of where I like to be. And as I sort of developed and came out of the broom closet even more, I have been a witch since I was a small child, but I didn't know it. And I didn't know that I came from a line of witches, and I had no idea what it really meant, which is why I'm doing this workshop for you now. But coming from that, and even in my own business, transitioning to allow this side of me to come through, the reason for that is no matter where I was going, no matter what work I was doing with the lovely women that I was working with, it was really apparent that there was a common theme throughout. And that theme was related to confidence. And these women were epic. The clients that come to me, the clients that I work with, they're phenomenal, and their energy is beautiful, but they do not see it in the first instance, or they have an inkling that it's there. They have an inkling that they're capable of more, that they're on this planet to do more than perhaps they are doing right now, that they are deserving of that relationship, of that business, or that lifestyle. But there's something really deep seated that holds all of them back, and they feel like imposters. They feel like, how dare I like dream that I could be a multimillionaire? Like, who am I to say I could write a book? They have all this imposter syndrome. And I know as a witch where that truly originates from. And it is from our ancestors and perhaps your past lives as well. But it is something that women especially hold on to, because we store everything in our womb space, whether you have a physical womb or not. You store everything in that space because it's almost like this suitcase or this cauldron, and it's this area where we can store things that perhaps no longer serve us, and it just acts as kind of like that that vacuum. So it will suck everything away that's kind of getting in the way, not serving us, but we'll just keep it there. And this is why a lot of women then tend to have, problems with their cycle, problems with fertility, period pains, things like that, or their cycle's completely all over the place. And it's because of storing things in that space. But also the reason that we carry things from our ancestors and the women and men that have come before us is because we come out of that womb space. And our mothers came out of their mother's womb space. So it follows along this line. And typically you will hold at least 7 generations worth, if not more. And as a witch and as someone who is aware of, the persecution and the witch trials and all the horrendous things that happened centuries ago, I can see exactly where it comes from, because back at that moment in history, also really random side note here, but this blew my mind. History stands for his story, because history, all the things that we learn about history and times gone by, was written by men, because women weren't allowed. Women didn't know how to write. That blew my mind. So just as a little thing, everything you read about history comes from a man. And this is not man bashing at all. I love men from the bottom of my heart. I have beautiful men who surround me. And a lot of men were also part of the witch trials. A very small amount, it was 85% women, but they were still part of it. And this is not to say that men are the bad guys at all, but they did have a very different agenda back then, and sometimes still do today. So just something to be mindful of when we're talking about this. It's more referring to the masculine energy of society. But even the documentation on the witch trials, and you've probably heard of some of them. You may have heard of like the Salem witch trials or the Pendle witches. There's lots of stories out there, but just keep in mind that was actually written by men. But you will find that women were accused of everything. And it was a power move. There is no denying that. All those persecutions came about because women were basically self-training. They were training themselves to become doctors, to be healers and midwives. So the women in a village would be the ones that sort of came together and delivered babies. And they would turn to the earth for medicine, because this was before pharmaceuticals existed. So we would get medicine from plants and the trees and the earth. And we were very self-sufficient. And that was the problem. So there were two kind of struggles that happened at this time. One of them was a power thing. So if women were self-sufficient and they were not needing to get married, they weren't needing to depend on a man, they were kind of doing their own things. The state and the church at that time did not like that, because that was not a woman's place. So they were like, okay, we need to get a hold of these women. We need to control our women, basically. That was part of it. The other part was to do with money. And keep in mind, it's only recently that women have even been allowed to have bank accounts. Again, mind-blowing. But at this time in the 16th, 17th centuries, when women were able to get medicine and create these wonderful elixirs and lotions and potions from planet Earth, there was a realization that money could be made from these materials. And so the pharmaceutical industry was born. People began to train, men began to train as doctors. So if women were able to do this without that formal training, which of course they weren't allowed to go and do because they were women, then we had to get rid of them. We were seen as a nuisance. We were seen as imposters. And heaven forbid you spoke up for what you believed in, because straight away you were then on trial. And it was also safer to throw someone else under the bus, because then it turned the spotlight towards them rather than you. So families turned against each other. Women were blaming their children for being witches if it meant that they were then saved. It was the competition and the rivalry between women was rife because it was literally a life or death situation. And this is where our sister wounds come from. This is where our witch wound comes from. So when I saw these women coming to me that had these beautiful energies and auras and power deep within them, but they couldn't see it or they didn't feel they were allowed to let it out, I knew that came from these points in history. And it's still happening today. Even last week, I saw it again. Beautiful women in business who are wanting to showcase their talents, but they feel like they can't actually stand up and be seen. Or, if you've ever felt, oh, I can't do a Facebook Live or anything like that. Like it's like suppressing your own voice. And this is exactly where it comes from. So that was quite a long-winded explanation, but this is why I do the work that I do as a witch that is out of the broom closet, to hopefully help other women also find their voice and feel safe to stand up in their power. We are now safe to do so. And it's more important now than ever that we do, because there's a real mismatch of energies in the universe right now. We are still very much in a masculine society. We are still very much being human doings rather than human beings. 80% of women are exhausted because we are trying to keep up with the masculine, and that's not how we are designed, biologically or otherwise. That is not the kind of energy that we are here to embody. And as a collective, the whole planet is seeing this misalignment and too much of this masculine energy, which is leading to illness, exhaustion, pandemics, all the things that are not serving us as a collective. So just for a moment, I want you to allow yourself to sit with the word witch and say it out loud, and just see, how does that feel? What does that conjure up for you? Can you say it? Can you verbalize it? Can you say the word witch? And I often do this at my retreats, and there's always a mixed response. Some people are like, oh, I feel like I'm offending you. I feel like I'm insulting you. Some women just can't say it. And I would put money on them having a past life as a witch who was persecuted. And others just feel like it's a bit naughty. And some will feel really empowered when they say it. So perhaps they were more of an elder, a village elder, and a wise woman, or they come from ancestors who were. So how does the word feel? And if you are somebody who struggles to say it, or you feel like it is being insulting, then just take that as a little bit of an indication of some wounds that perhaps you want to start to work through. Because once you work through those wounds, I don't really like the word wound, but there kind of isn't another term for it that I've felt sits right yet. So we'll use that term for now. But if you allow yourself to work through that, not only will you improve your health and well-being, because you'll be clearing yourself of a lot of ancestral traumas and baggage and stagnant energy, so you will feel better. But also, if you are somebody who is working consciously with manifesting and attracting lovely, juicy, wonderful things into your life, which I have a separate masterclass about manifesting as a witch, but it will clear the way. So things will flow easier to you and quicker as well. So if you do feel like you have those wounds, and there's other ways you can identify this, have a little think about your relationship with women. Do you trust other women? Do you feel comfortable around other women? As a child, did you have many female friends? What are you like in a relationship? Do you feel safe and trusting of the masculine, or do you perhaps feel like their property? And again, it was only very recently that the term Mrs. had the apostrophe removed, because another strategy that happened in this 16th, 17th century, when the church actually agreed to allow marriage, to legalize marriage, it was to ensure that women were owned by men and therefore they could be controlled by men. And when you write Mr. and Mrs., it used to be an apostrophe S because the Mrs. belonged to the Mr. And it's only recent that that apostrophe's disappeared. So how do you feel when you're in a relationship? Do you feel like you're owned? Do you feel like property? Do you feel safe in the masculine? Do you feel threatened by other women at that point? Do you feel jealous of other women? And it can sometimes feel triggering to even admit these things, but I have been there. All of these things I have personally felt. I had very challenging relationships with women all of my life. As long as I can remember, I did have close friends in primary school, but I was also bullied a lot, especially by like the popular girls. And even those that I saw as my best friends, because they were also in with the popular girls, there were times, you know, I wouldn't be invited to birthday parties, or I would, and there's photos of me kind of like sat on my own on like the edge of things, and it's heartbreaking. And then when I had parties, it was mainly the boys that came. So my witch wounds go way back. And then, you know, throughout college, I actually left college because of the toxic environment that was coming from women. It was coming from my female friends. My best friend betrayed me and sabotaged my relationship that I had been in since year 7. So since I was 12. And that was my best friend. And then every other woman in that circle then turned against me. So I left college. I taught myself my A levels. I couldn't be in that environment. So if you feel any of this competition, if you feel any of this tension with other women, or this threat from them, just know that it's okay, and you can absolutely move through it. You can work through it, because I have, and now women are sacred to me just as much as men are. You know, the spaces that I hold with my clients and my coaching circles are just the safest, most beautiful sanctuary. So know that it's okay to acknowledge if you have these feelings. And again, if you have these feelings towards men as well, if you feel threatened by the masculine, if you feel like you can't trust men, or that men are bad in any way, it's coming back from these ancient times, because back then they were a threat to us. They were a threat to our lives. And without getting too deep into the science, because that's what this masterclass is about, but at that time, you know, you will have gone into a fight, flight, or freeze response. And you may find, depending on what your goals are right now, depending on what you're working towards right now, whatever it is you're manifesting or attracting, part of you in your subconscious or your unconscious or deep within your soul imprint, is still experiencing that response. So your central nervous system today will still be sort of blocking things out. Again, tune into my manifestation masterclass if you want to hear more about that one. But see how the word witch feels. If it feels powerful to you, then brilliant. But if it still feels a little bit stuck, or you can't say it, then just know that there's a little bit of healing that you want to bring to yourself in that area. Now, let's have a little talk about what it means to be a witch in modern day. Okay. And there's no real order to this. I've got some notes here, but there's no real order to explaining this, I guess. So one of the things that we are very in tune with is our intuition. And you're probably thinking, aren't all women in tune to their intuition? Yes, they are. They are naturally more intuitive. And the reason for that is because we are naturally more in sync to Mother Earth. We are naturally more in sync to nature. You know, whether you have periods, whether you menstruate or not, your body will still go through 13 energetic cycles a year. as the moon goes through 13 cycles a year. So when I spoke about the masculine and us being in a very masculine society, men will have a 24-hour cycle. Ours is around 28 days. So when we are trying to have the same constant energy as the masculine, we can't, because for part of that cycle, whether we bleed or not, our energy is very different. It's lower, it's insular. It wants to turn in. So as a modern day witch, we embrace those cycles. We embrace that energy of the seasons as well. We celebrate Sabbats, or you may have heard them as the equinox or the solstice. So we have 8 holidays a year. If you are a witch who is following more of a pagan path, the wonderful thing about all of this as a witch, it's not classed as a religion, it's classed as a belief system. And there are no rules with it. The only kind of rule that we tend to follow, but again, not every practitioner will, is to not harm anybody. So you can make this your own. But for me personally, as a modern day witch, I do celebrate those 8 pagan holidays, but you don't have to. But I kind of enjoy them as a check-in at different times of the year, the same as the espats, the same as the moon cycles. I also use them as a check-in point and see how my energy is doing in relation to that point in time, that point in the season. So we're very in tune to that naturally, because that's how our bodies are made. We are cyclical beings. Now, if you are thinking, well, if this applies to every woman, then is every woman a witch? You are absolutely right. And it's up to us whether we want to claim that status or not, because if you have those feelings about witches being bad, then naturally you're going to be like, well, I don't want to be classed as a witch. And if you have had those past life experiences of persecution, then of course you're not going to want to adopt that identity. You're going to steer clear of it. And even if, you may not believe in past lives, but even if you think back to your ancestors, the women that came before you, if they were around at that time, chances are they will have been around for the witch trials. And maybe they were part of that as well. Maybe they were persecuted. And remember, they were persecuted for being healers, for being the medicine men and women, for, helping ladies give birth. They were also trialed for ridiculous things like thunder and lightning, because we didn't know what that was back then. So they were blamed for it. And that was crazy. That was bad. They were like, oh, no, they're in control of the weather. We need to stop them. If someone got ill, straight away, women were blamed for it. If they healed someone, then they were classed as a witch because they've healed someone. So there was really no winning. There was no win situation at that point. But if you have descended from that, then naturally you will want to repel that part of you. And, you can even change the name. So when I very first started out on this journey, I would class myself more as a healer than saying I'm a witch, because sometimes when I say I'm a witch, people look at me like I've got 2 heads and they go, does that mean like you curse people and you do like bad things? No, absolutely not. And don't get me wrong, there will be some practitioners who do. There is no black and white magic either. That is not a thing. That actually comes from quite a racist historical point for those who practice voodoo in Africa. But there will be some practitioners who do, like, I've just gone into Harry Potter mode now of like practicing the dark arts. And, Hollywood actually does have a lot to answer for with this and how it depicts witches. But if you can think more of like Glinda from The Wizard of Oz, that is probably truer than being green. But Also, the reason that often we were depicted as green or with crooked noses or warts is because when we were imprisoned, that is probably how we would have ended up looking, because we were imprisoned in very small spaces. So we would have been hunched over, and perhaps that would have altered our posture and, gangrene and developing warts because it wasn't very sanitary and all these things. So actually, that is kind of where that has led from, which is not very pleasant to think about. So women are naturally witches. Use whatever terminology feels good for you. But when we tap into that intuition, when we tap into our energetic cycles, it allows us to be consistent in our practices. So consistent in achieving your goals, consistent in your habits that you're building, consistent in your manifesting work, whatever it may be. It allows for that consistency, and it also allows you to design your diary or your lifestyle however you wish, based on your own energetic rhythms, based on the seasons. Okay, so that is the beauty of it. And also with that intuition, comes divination. If you want to work with oracle cards or tarot or tea leaves or pendulums or scrying, or you want to work with your dreams, whatever it is, you have that ability because it comes from your intuition first and foremost, and trusting that intuition. And also from your womb space, again, all interlinked. Your womb space actually connects to your heart and then to your throat. So whenever you feel like you can't speak up, you can't be your true self, it's not coming out of your throat because you're not able to verbalize it, which then affects your heart. And what's the number one killer of women? Heart disease. You're storing stuff there, or in your womb. Top cancers in women tend to be around that area. Okay, and it's all stemming from not being able or not allowing ourselves to be our true self and have our voice. So we are here to bring the voice back, ladies. That is exactly what we are here for. So trusting that intuition, working with your guides, working with your ancestors, connecting to the divine. That is another thing that, as a modern witch, any witch, even if you're working more with the ancient ways of things, is knowing that we are all connected, and having that universal love and respect for everybody is a huge part of it. And that instantly, gets rid of that myth that we are here to harm people or hex or curse or whatever, because we are all one energy. And you will typically find that those women who are more empathetic, that feel more, are naturally more inclined to explore this more spiritual side of themselves, this more witchy, magical world, because they feel that connection. And it's okay if you don't feel that. You can tune into it over time if you wish to. So we do have that universal love and respect for all beings. Okay. Now, the other things that we tend to do, which gives us more power, but also more consistency, and allows us, I guess, to have a bit of a smoother ride and a bit of an easier life. So if you're someone who feels very overwhelmed, if you're feeling quite burnt out and exhausted, like we said earlier, 80% of women are, then by following more of a witch's spiritual, soulful path, you will allow yourself to release that. And the way that we do that is, first and foremost, we always work with intention. So if ever you have come across a spell, or you've, seen someone cast a spell, the first thing we start with is our intention. Your intention is the most powerful thing that you have. And if you are familiar with working with the law of attraction and manifesting, the first thing you may do is think about what it is that you want. And what we do as witches is we ramp that up because we make it an intention. It's not just a wish, it's not just a desire. It is our intention to follow through and achieve that. So there's a lot more power behind an intention than there is behind a wish or a desire. But, you know, if you have ever blown out your birthday cake candles and made a wish or wished upon a star, you've practiced witchcraft, you've made a spell. So most of us have, you know, men included in that as well. You're practicing witchcraft every day. You just don't necessarily realize you're doing it. But we follow through on those intentions. That is one of the most important things. And we have that consistency because we're in tune with the cycles of ourselves and of the earth as well. And the other thing that I find really beneficial as a witch is being able to go to the dark places. And I'd say out of all the things that I do with my clients, when I say we're going to do shadow work or we're going to connect to your dark feminine, the fear comes across and like rabbits in headlights, like, oh God, what does she mean? And as a witch, I think you are, I guess, less afraid of the dark because most of us are either very strongly connected to those women of the past that we've spoke about that went through the most horrific of dark times, or if we have known we have been on this path for a long time, like myself. So I knew from a very, very young age that I was different and I was on this path. I went through darkness from being 4 years old. So yes, it still scares me when I go through my own dark nights, but because I am so used to being in those dark places, and I also see the benefit of those dark times, I will gladly sit with you in your darkness. And I always make the joke that I dance with the devil because he looks like Lucifer from Netflix. That's a little devil I have in my mind. And I will sit with those fears with you. And if you embrace that inner witch as well, you will find that you are more comfortable in your own darkness. And the more comfortable you get in your own darkness, the easier it will be for you to sit with others in that space as well. So all those times where you're not feeling great, you're not feeling yourself, you're not feeling so sparkling, you're feeling really down in the dumps, or even worse. So your true dark nights of the soul, no matter where they are on the scale of darkness and intensity, they are invaluable because they really show you, first and foremost, what your soul is trying to say to you. And if you're in that place, then it's almost like you've come unstuck from the path that you're destined to be on. Whenever you feel a bit icky and a bit off, it's just because you've let go of the hand of your higher self and where you're supposed to be heading. But if that happens, it is fantastic. And again, this is something that we have been conditioned out of. You know, we're always told, oh, don't cry, or don't be upset, or, you know, pick your chin up, crack a smile. You know, we're taught to not be in that darkness, but there is so much power in that darkness because if you are there, it is for a lesson, and your emotions are there to signpost what is it that has gone wrong. You know, if you are feeling angry, then someone has overstepped a mark somewhere. Your boundaries have been crossed either by yourself or by somebody else. Okay, if you're feeling really depressed, it is a signal that you need deep rest. Your body is calling for rest. So when you actually allow yourself to feel those darker emotions, you get to know yourself a heck of a lot better and what you're here for, but also what you need. And remember, your emotions are energy in motion. They are there to guide you to take action, to make a change. So if we ignore them, if we suppress them and go, oh no, I don't want to feel like this, then we're not using them for their purpose. And this isn't to say that you want to be wallowing or staying in your darkness for a really long time. It might happen that way. You can set yourself a timer if you want to for a pity party, whatever feels good for you, but also don't be afraid of them, because they are part of you. And the more that you get familiar with your shadow side and that darker side of you and your darker desires that maybe you don't want to share with anyone, the more comfortable you are with that, the more accepting of yourself you will be overall. And that's going to boost how much you love and respect yourself. And that has a massive knock-on effect for everything. So that is something that is a huge benefit to being on a witchy path. Okay. The other aspect of that is, I'm trying to think of how to explain this without it being really scientific, but we collapse time. And your head might have just popped off. What? We can collapse time. And you may have heard of this before, especially if you are quite familiar with manifesting. You may have heard of quantum leaping, or being in the matrix, or healing within the matrix. And it is very sciencey because it is science. It's quantum physics, which you don't have to be a quantum physicist. It's okay. And this is what I love to explain to my clients in really easy to digest chunks, so that you understand how to work with it, how to fully manifest, but also how it all fits together. But the reason I want to mention it in this masterclass, again, if you want to have a watch of the Which Way to Manifest masterclass, that will give you a little bit more on this, but it is primarily what I teach my clients. But the reason I want to bring this up here is because part of collapsing that time is being fully self-aware. And that means every single aspect of you. That means the dark aspects of you. That means the traumas, the wounds, the baggage, everything that we typically will brush under the carpet because we've been taught to do that. We've been conditioned that way. And what we want to do is kind of tip that all on its head and get it all out, get all the baggage out and process it and work through it. And by doing that, you change your quantum field, you adjust the matrix, and you collapse time. And it's so powerful that I can't even put it into words. That would not be another 3-hour session. But if you want to find out more about that, then please do message me and I can help you out and guide you towards my programs. But something that you can do that I would love you to take away from this session is working with what we call correspondences. Now, we've already mentioned the seasons and the Sabbats, your equinoxes, your solstices, your moon cycles. So they are all correspondences as well. And what we mean by correspondences is, let's say you are working on attracting a relationship. Okay, you want to attract your dream partner, or you want to improve your existing relationship. So how we can enhance that, as well as all like the actions that you may be taking, the healing work that you may be doing alongside this, is you can incorporate magic by having an enhancer. And your correspondences are what do that. So for example, if you're starting something new, then you may want to be doing a little bit of a ritual at the new moon to plant your seeds for what you want that relationship to be like. Okay. You may also have things like red candles around, because red is the color correspondence for love and passion. You might like to carry crystals with you. So, I nearly always have some kind of crystal on me, or in my bra or my sock, or around me. There's loads all here. And they all have different correspondences. They all have different energies to enhance something. So for love, you may decide to carry rose quartz, for example. You might like to have a nice little goddess bath. That could be your ritual, and you might add in like rose water or vanilla, rose petals, all the things that correspond with love, romance, and relationships. If you're doing a ritual, you may call on certain goddesses. You may like to do a ritual on a Friday, which is the day of Venus and the goddess of love. So all of these correspondences, they can really enhance the work that you're already doing. Okay, they just add that little extra something special to it. So they are not essential at all. Your healing work and your actions are essential. No question about it. But these enhancers do exactly that. They just enhance things. Okay. And they anchor you as well. If ever I have like a necklace like this on, it anchors me, because it's there as like a constant reminder of what it is that I am working towards, what it is that I am calling in. Okay. So they are brilliant as being an anchor and just keeping you aligned with where you're going, because especially if it's something physically on you, but it can even be like how you dress. You may wear red, you may wear pink, and you might decide to just alter things about your appearance to align with what it is you're calling in. Nothing too drastic, but by doing that, it changes your energy. And that is exactly what all of this is about. Everything in this world, this universe, is energy. And all witches are doing is tuning in to that energy and utilizing that energy to help us, one, have a more relaxed and streamlined lifestyle, two, to feel better and healthier and have a better sense of well-being, to feel connected and know who we really are and that we are part of something bigger, and have that faith and that belief and that safety as well, but also to utilize these energies to help us attract and cultivate and manifest whatever it is that you desire. This just enhances it and makes it a heck of a lot easier. So, have I covered everything that I wanted to on my little post-it note? I think we have. It's one of those things that can be quite challenging to put in a nutshell, because there's so much to it. It's like, asking someone to explain who they are in a really short space of time. But I do hope this has shown you more what a real witch is like, in that it is just, I'm a regular human, but I am incredibly in touch with my intuition. I have developed certain abilities over time as well, because I have chosen to do that, but it's not essential. There are no essential requirements to be a witch. It is just owning it. That's it. Regardless of gender, regardless of sexuality, just owning it. And I hope more than anything that you see the importance of it, especially as a woman, so that you allow your voice, you allow yourself to be seen. A lot of clients that come to me they're holding extra physical weight on their bodies because they're protecting themselves from being seen. And when they start to do this kind of work and this healing and this releasing of those witch wounds and sisterhood wounds and all that baggage, they find that their physical body changes too. because you show up differently, and you know, your libido and your sex drive will pick up as well, especially if you ever have womb healing with me, because we are clearing that space. And your creativity, you know, it literally starts your juices flowing again, because it releases all that stagnant energy from wherever it's sat in your body. And that is so, so important, because we are not in a time now where women should be suppressed, where we should have our power taken away, where you should have your sexuality taken away, where you should have your voice or your rights taken away. You know, this is needed by the whole universe for women to step up and own their power, own their place as an equal in this world. So we have that balance, so we have that equilibrium, so we can support the masculine, so that we can work together as a collective. It is so important for all of us that women start to do this and start to own who they are. Even, you know, in business at the moment, of all the active businesses within the UK, there are only 17% that are owned by women. And those of you lovely ladies who do have your own business, if you scaled that business at the same rate as what men do, then even just in the UK economy would have an additional £250 billion. So you can see how this has other implications as well. By us keeping ourselves small and being quiet and being a good girl, makes me icky. By doing that, we are having massive impacts on other things in our world around us. So I hope, in a very odd-shaped nutshell, that this has given you a little bit of an insight into being a modern day witch. And if you are not already and you feel like you want to explore this a little bit more, then please do feel free to jump into my free Facebook group. It is a gorgeous community, and it is women who are curious and want to explore this a little bit more and see how it could help them. There's tons of stuff in there. There's lots of training, lots of resources. There's other masterclasses, the manifestation one, like I mentioned, but I also do live sessions weekly in there as well on various different bits and pieces. We have other beautiful guests come in as well. And it's just a gorgeous, safe space. If you do want to explore or just find out a little bit more, then I would love to welcome you into that space. But also, if you do have any questions, then you have my permission to slide into my DMs and send me a personal message, and I will do my very best to help you, to answer your questions. I am always open and honest, so please don't feel as though you are insulting me, or that a question is silly or that you can't ask it. I am giving you permission to ask. So please feel free, if there's anything that's come up for you from this, or if you want to go a little bit deeper with this work, or if there's something that I've said that you want to find out a little bit more about, then please ask and I can point you in the right direction. But I want to thank you so much for listening to this little masterclass that's probably not so little actually at 50 minutes, but I hope it has given you a bit of an insight, a bit of clarity, and something to think about as well. So thank you so much, gorgeous soul, and I will hopefully see you very soon. Mwah! Much love.